Ever get curious, about how much power billionaires and big corporations really have in politics? Like, how much can their money actually change laws and policies? Well, that's what we're diving into today. The influence of big money, especially from folks like, the Koch brothers, Charles and David, will explore the network they built, the tactics they used, and how it all played out in American politics, like from the early 2000s to the mid 2010s. So to really grasp this, we got to start with Charles Koch, right? He grew up in this pretty intense environment. His dad, Fred, was a founding member of the John Birch Society. That group that saw communists behind every corner. They even thought that JFK's assassination was like a communist plot. So yeah, young Charles is immersed in this world of like ultra conservatism right from the start. Then he's sent off to Culver Military Academy, this super strict boarding school known for its discipline. He actually gets expelled for, you know, drinking on a train. Classic teenage rebellion, right? But he manages to get back in and graduates. Now, here's where things get interesting. Charles discovers the work of this economist, Friedrich Hayek. Hayek was all about free markets, minimal government, the whole thing. And Charles, he devours Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom. It becomes his gospel, like his political Bible. He's so convinced by these free market ideas that he even makes his future wife study them before they get married. We're talking about a prenuptial agreement, right? So Charles, along with his brother David, they inherit Koch Industries, which under their leadership becomes this gigantic conglomerate. Oil refineries, pipelines, lumber, chemicals, you name it, they're in it. And they become insanely wealthy, but it's not enough for them. They want to use their fortune to reshape America, in their own image, their vision of a truly free market society. And that's where the Koch network comes in. It starts small with Charles funding this program called the Freedom School. Let's just say it had a very particular, some might say radical, take on American history and economics. Even Charles's own brother, Freddie, thought the curriculum was ridiculous. Can you imagine family dinners, devolving into arguments about free market principles? Anyway, the network evolves. They try their hand at the Libertarian Party. David even runs for vice president in 1980. But they quickly realize that going full-on libertarian isn't the most effective way to achieve their goals. They need a more, let's call it, strategic approach. Enter Richard Fink, Charles's right-hand man. He's like the architect of the whole operation. Fink comes up with this three-part plan. First, support academics who promote free market ideas. Second, create and fund think tanks to spread those ideas. And third, get directly involved in electoral politics, like a comprehensive strategy, a political playbook designed to shift the balance of power. To execute this plan, they recruit key players. There's James Pearson, who's like obsessed with establishing these beachheads of conservative thought in academia, planting their ideology right into universities. And then there's Sean Noble, the master of dark money. Now, dark money is this shadowy world of political funding where money flows through nonprofits that don't have to disclose their donors, so you can't trace it back to the source. It's like a political shell game designed to keep things hidden. And this brings us to the whole weaponizing philanthropy thing. It's where things get a little murky. The Talk Network uses tax-exempt organizations like charities, foundations, the usual, to funnel money into politics. They set up groups with innocent-sounding names like Donors Trust, the Center to Protect Patient Rights, Americans for Prosperity. Sounds harmless, right? But these groups become vehicles for influencing elections and pushing policies without revealing where the money's actually coming from. They're particularly interested in academia. They target universities, pouring money into conservative professors and programs. Think tanks like the Manhattan Institute and the Cato Institute become hotbeds of free market ideology. Yeah. They even fund like controversial figures like Alan Bloom and Dinesh D'Souza. The Dartmouth Review, that notoriously provocative campus publication. Yeah, they get support too. They're trying to shape the very intellectual environment that young people are exposed to influence the next generation. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just free speech? People donating to causes they believe in. and that's a legitimate point. But critics argue that this level of funding, especially when it's hidden, can really distort the marketplace of ideas. Can you have a fair debate when one side is armed with like a financial bazooka and the other side has a slingshot? It's a question worth considering, right? But the Kochs don't stop there. They also wade into the political arena. One of their biggest targets is the Tea Party movement. Remember those massive protests against Obama's policies, especially the Affordable Care Act? Well, behind the scenes, the Koch network was a driving force. They helped organize those rallies, and churn out those, shall we say, creative ads. And they targeted moderate Republicans who weren't on board with their agenda. They even went after like politicians like Congressman Bob Etheridge with these really aggressive tactics. It was like a full-on political assault. And thanks to dark money, most people had no idea the Kochs were behind it. It was like a political ghost army, But their influence went way beyond just federal elections. They understood that real power often lies at the state level, right? So they started pouring money into groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALA-MIESI. Now, ALA-US, it brings together conservative lawmakers and corporate lobbyists to draft model legislation, basically pre-written bills that can be introduced in state legislatures across the country. It's like a fast-track system for turning corporate interests into law. You know what I mean? And guess what? ALA-US has been incredibly successful. They've pushed through bills that weaken environmental regulations, restrict voting rights, and make it harder for workers to join unions. It's a quiet but incredibly effective way to reshape America from the ground up. Now the Canucks aren't the only billionaires playing this game, right? There are plenty of others, like Sheldon Adelson, the casino magnate. He's a big one. And on the liberal side, you've got George Soros, who's been funding progressive causes for decades. But the Kochs stand out because of the sheer scale and sophistication of their network. It's like a political octopus with tentacles reaching into every corner of the system. But let's get back to the Tea Party for a second. One of their key groups, Americans for Prosperity, was like super active. They organized rallies, put out these misleading ads, and even went after politicians like Congressman Bob Etheridge with these aggressive tactics. And the beauty of it was, thanks to dark money, most people had like no idea the Kochs were behind it all. It was like a political ghost army, And it wasn't just about politics in the traditional sense. They also went after climate change science. Now, this is a touchy subject, I know, but the Kochs, being heavily invested in fossil fuels, they had a vested interest in discrediting climate change research. One of their targets was this scientist named Michael Mann. He created this famous hockey stick graph that showed the dramatic rise in global temperatures, and they went after him hard using this incident called ClimateGate. Some emails from climate scientists were hacked and then like selectively released to make it look like they were manipulating data. It was a PR nightmare for climate science, and it definitely slowed down progress on addressing climate change. So let's fast forward to 2010. This is a pivotal year, folks. The midterm elections are coming up, and the Kochs be a huge opportunity to shift the balance of power. They gather their network of donors for this super secret summit at a fancy resort in Palm Springs, California. It's like a billionaires political strategy retreat. They got all the big players there: Sean Noble, Richard Fink, Tim Phillips, the head of Americans for Prosperity. They're strategizing about how to channel their millions into supporting Republican candidates, and they're not just thinking short term. They bring the Karl Rove, the mastermind behind George W. Bush's electoral victories,
Rove lays out this plan called Red Map. Now, Red Map wasn't about winning the presidency. It was about targeting state legislative races. Why? Because whoever controls the state legislatures often gets to control the redistricting process after the census. See, every 10 years we redraw the electoral maps based on population changes, and the party in power can basically rig the system in their favor through gerrymandering. It's a brilliant, albeit controversial, long-term strategy. Anyway, the Koch money helps fuel a Republican wave in the 2010 midterms. They take control of the House of Representatives, and Redwood gives them a leg up in retrying electoral maps. It's a huge victory for the Koch network. But they don't stop there. They set their sights on the 2012 presidential election. They're not initially thrilled with Mitt Romney as the Republican nominee. They see him as too moderate, too willing to compromise. But they eventually throw their weight behind him, pouring millions into groups supporting his campaign. There's this telling moment during the Republican primaries where Newt Gingrich, Romney's main rival, goes after Romney's record at Bain Capital, the private equity firm he founded. Gingrich paints Romney as this corporate raider, a symbol of greed and excess. And guess who's funding Gingrich's attacks? Sheldon Adelson, a casino magnate and one of the wealthiest men in the world. It's a billionaire on billionaire brawl, folks. But Romney eventually wins the nomination, and the Kochs mobilize their network to try to take down Obama. They pour money into groups like Americans for Prosperity, which runs these misleading ads attacking Obama's policies, especially the Affordable Care Act. They also fund groups that engage in voter suppression efforts, trying to make it harder for minorities and low-income people to vote. Despite their efforts, Obama wins re-election. But the Koch network doesn't give up. They're already planning for the next election cycle, refining their tactics and building their war chest. They're in it for the long haul, folks. They see themselves as fighting a battle for the very soul of America, their version of America, of course. Now let's talk about some of the fallout from all of this. The Koch's money and influence have had a profound impact on American politics. They've helped push the Republican Party further to the right, making it more ideologically rigid and less willing to compromise. They've also helped create a climate of political polarization where the two parties are increasingly at odds and unable to find common ground. Their funding of climate change denial has also had a significant impact, delaying action on this critical issue, and their support for groups that engage in voter suppression has made it harder for some Americans to exercise their right to vote. So what can we do about all of this? That's the $1 million question, right?
Some people argue for campaign finance reform to limit the amount of money that wealthy individuals and corporations can pour into politics. Others advocate for greater transparency, requiring groups that engage in political spending to disclose their donors. But the Kochs and their allies argue that this is all just free speech, that they have a right to support causes they believe in, and they've been very effective at using the legal system to protect their right to spend money on politics. It's a complex issue, folks, with no easy answers. But here's a thought-provoking question for you to ponder. In a system where money equals speech, do all voices really have an equal chance of being heard? Or do the voices of the wealthy and powerful drown out the voices of ordinary Americans? It's a tough question, right? And there's no easy answer. But I think it's something we all need to grapple with. The Kochs and their network, they've shown us just how much influence concentrated wealth can have on our political system. They've poured millions, even billions into shaping the political landscape, from funding think tanks to bankrolling candidates to orchestrating these astroturf movements. And they're not alone, right? We've seen other billionaires like Sheldon Adelson and George Soros
doing similar things that maybe not on the same scale as the Kochs. It raises some fundamental questions about our democracy. If a handful of ultra wealthy individuals can wield this kind of power, what does it mean for the rest of us, for the average citizen who doesn't have millions to throw around? It's easy to get cynical, to feel like the system is rigged against us. But I don't think we should give up. There are things we can do. We can support organizations that are fighting for campaign finance reform, for greater transparency in political spending, for the protection of voting rights. We can educate ourselves about the issues and make our voices heard. And maybe, just maybe, we can start to shift the balance of power back towards the people. The Kochs have their vision of America, but it's not the only vision. It's up to us to articulate a different vision, a vision of a more just, equitable, and democratic society. And it's up to us to fight for that vision to make it a reality. So that's our deep dive into the world of billionaire political influence. It's a complex and often disturbing story, but it's a story we need to understand.
Yeah.
Because only by understanding the problem can we start to find solutions. And as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this thought: democracy is fragile. It takes work. It takes vigilance. It takes all of us participating. So stay engaged, stay informed, and never stop fighting for the kind of world you want to live in.